So this morning we are talking parent-teachers conferences. In fact, I organised, I wasn't called in for, which does make it slightly better, a parent-teacher conference on Friday. And earlier in the week I had, shall we call it a spirited debate with a friend of mine who is a teacher. So I thought, what should I do? One, to help my friends who are teachers kind of understand a parent perspective, but also help parents be better at handling themselves in parent-teacher conferences, and then put a request out to anybody who's watching this who's a teacher, saying, so what could we be doing to kind of get a better reaction from you? So before we start, a massive disclaimer, because I am lucky enough to have Chris in a school where I have fabulous relationships with the vast majority of the teachers. They tend to have a lower turnover of staff, so a lot of them lived through Josh's illnesses and have seen the impact that has had on us as a family, and as Chris as a student, and have been more supportive than ever I could have wished for. So that is my massive disclaimer. I'm one of the moms who really, really likes the staff at the school, but there are some things about parent-teacher conferences that freak me out. So I wanted to talk about those this morning, and then maybe give, if you would like me, or a parent who finds them really, really stressful, maybe give you a quick technique, actually, and this is a technique that I've stolen from the school, actually. So my son is enrolled in a program called Crew, the school that is being run by, she's I think Cynthia Pillay, but I might be wrong about the first name. I'm terrible, aren't I? Mrs. Pillay, who is running this kind of program that Chris is enrolled in at school to help kids, one, be able to be kind of counselors to other kids, but also work on themselves a little bit. And from what Chris is telling me, it's really, really powerful stuff, but she's given him an awesome technique. There's somebody watching, I don't know who you are, hello. An awesome technique for managing anxiety during it. But teachers, let me tell you some things first so that you understand where we are coming from and why it is so stressful. So the first thing that you must understand is that as parents, even though our kids might be in high school or even university now, we have not forgiven you for the grade R and grade 1, the reception year parent-teacher conference, where you got to sit on an adult chair and you made us sit on the 6-inch chair for the little kids. I actually wanted to go and buy one. Shannon told me it'd be a waste of money, and do this from sitting on one of those very tiny chairs. We have not forgiven you yet. Remembering, of course, that the vast majority of parents are in professions. We understand power dynamics. We understand that when you try and look bigger than us, it's a power play, and we haven't forgiven you yet. So say sorry. Right, with that out the way, there are some things that I think as a parent you see fundamentally differently from as a teacher. So one of the things that in this kind of spirited debate that I had, that was that as teachers, I think a lot of the time your identity is that I'm an educator, and my job is all about the professional techniques as a teacher to help learning and to help children blossom and all those good things, and you are 100% right to be doing that. As a parent, and particularly parents who come from the corporate world, how we see you is you're a service provider, and what you see in this kind of social contract, and I think like in a school like ours, it's not just a social contract. I think we've signed a physical contract with you as well. But the social contract that kind of your understanding is often about kind of education, using education techniques, helping children, making sure that the class is balanced. You are carrying a whole paradigm that as parents we don't see. And as hurtful as this may sound, we actually don't care. So the contract that we thought we signed up for was, we give you a bucket load of cash, you provide us at the end of school with a well-adjusted, well-educated child who's going to get into med school. I'm only joking about med school, but actually in the school that my kid goes to, a lot of them, it is about med school, but is fully prepared to enter the tertiary education that will be required for whatever their choice of career is going to be. So one of the things that you have to understand this, but one of the things to really consider when we're having a meeting like that is that our paradigms are really different. As a parent, we're talking to a vendor. Yeah, to you, you are talking to the parents who have produced this little shit who's causing problem in your class. And that, I guess, brings me to the third point. When a parent is called in for a parent-teacher conference, understand that effectively you've sent us to the naughty step. So we start the conference always with a, what the, like I'm on the naughty step. And to be honest, being sent to the naughty step at whatever age you are, it's still the frickin' naughty step, okay? Like, we're feeling pretty defensive and pretty pissed at that point. And the second thing that goes hand in hand with that is that our children, like especially for moms, but dads as well, we bake these in our tummy. They're our babies. They might be 6 foot tall, weigh 80 kgs and be absolutely full of crap. They're still our babies who we bake in our tummies, and we feel pretty defensive when you tell us that they're doing things that are wrong. We might secretly agree with you, but when you tell us we did something wrong, you're telling us that we are bad parents. And this little being that we baked in our tummies, we didn't do a good job. So, you always should consider that before you have opened your mouth, even if the parent-teacher conference is to say, by the way, your child is amazing. We're already on the naughty step, not hearing that. We're hearing like, what the beep? Okay. And our babies, I suppose the analogy that I can give you is, have you noticed with people like me, who are Brits, we can say things about the royal family. But if you are not a Brit, don't try that with us. Because we might agree with you, but we will take you down because it's our royal family, not your royal family, and you don't get a say. In this, you don't get to say that. It's like you dissing my granny, like, hell no. So that was the third thing that I wanted to say to you. And the other thing that you should probably know is that secretly, most of the time, like, we know, we agree, you don't see what goes down at home, you probably wouldn't approve of what goes down at home, because when we get home from a parent-teacher meeting, two things have happened for us. So the first is that someone has highlighted something that most probably we sort of figured out ourselves already, and we're like pretty grumpy about already, and may or may not have put things in place at home, but are still having that kind of issue pointed out to us, and we feel pretty criticized in that. So the first thing is that you don't know like what we've already put in place, and the second thing is you probably wouldn't approve, because this is what happens when we get home. So not only have you highlighted the issue to us that we now have to go and do something about, and I think most of them parents are as lazy as me. I don't know. I did have this weird meeting when Josh started in grade 8, which is the first year of high school in South Africa, where the teacher said to us, you know, your job as parents is to make sure that the child has a space and time to do homework, and to make sure that they do it. And I was sort of like, no, isn't this high school? Isn't this like that our job is to give them time and space to do homework, but if they elect not to do it, they take the consequences, because this is high school, right? And then, like, I found myself surrounded by a shocked set of mothers who had been doing their children's projects for them for the whole of primary school. I didn't do the projects. I did make my mother-in-law do a couple of them, but I didn't do any school projects in primary school. So anyway, when we get back from school, so number one, we've now got to get involved, which is a band, and put things in place, which we do begrudgingly. But the other thing is, like, for us now, when we're talking to our kids, is like, it's like, you little beep, you made me look bad. So any kind of intervention is probably going to be something that as a teacher you wouldn't approve of. I'll leave it as that. So that is parents-teacher conferences. I wanted to actually just again reaffirm my disclaimer. I had a really good teacher-parent conference on Friday, and except for the bit actually where the school counsellor told me that to threaten to tear one of the teachers I don't like limb from limb is considered bullying, and the school doesn't condone bullying, which I think is really unreasonable. I mean, the fees are really high. Surely I'm allowed to kill someone, but apparently not. Anyway, so as parents, what do we do? Because all those things stacked up together means that the second you walk into a teacher-parents conference, if you were like me, you have already planned in your head, you've become like the hero of a John Grisham novel. In the particular school that my kid goes to, there are lots of attorneys and advocates. So you have, hello, Almarie, it's really good to see you, actually. I have not spoken to you for ages. So, we are, as parents, we at the school my son goes to go back, there are lots of attorneys and advocates. So we have prepared some really cutting remarks, if with parents who aren't from those backgrounds, afterwards we lie in bed and prepare those, and then do a Facebook Live about them afterwards. No, I'm kidding. Although you could, and it would actually, I should maybe set up a Facebook group so that parents can post all the things that they want to say as those really biting comebacks in the parent-teacher conference. But for teachers, I think the important thing to know is that by the time that we arrive, we are pretty freaking anxious, actually, and we are also slightly defensive, because every time you tell us that our kid has done something bad, and in fact this I assume goes on for the rest of our lives. I had this interaction with my dad during the week where, he was like, what kind of father am I? I have a child who's a hermit, which then I had to go out and watch. Actually, it was a pretty good movie, but just to prove that I'm not a complete hermit, and I am actually, the agoraphobia is getting better. So well done, Dad. One of the things that we can do as parents, though, before we go into those, and I am going to steal this amazing little technique that my son got taught on this course that I was telling you about. Did I tell you about the course? So let me tell you about the course. My son is at the school. They are running a little course as an extramural for kids who I think want to be counselors at some point, but it's also a kind of personal development thing. And it's run by I think she's a clinical psychologist, Ms. Pillay, and yeah, Chris is getting all sorts of things out of it. But the one thing he taught me, which I'm kind of grumpy about, because I've been doing this stuff for a long time, and it really annoys me when somebody has a technique that's better than mine. But she taught them this really great technique that you can do, and no one needs to know you're doing it, right? Hello, It's really nice to see you around. Hello, hello, hello. I've got a new cover coming up. Oh, secret. Okay. Carol is my wonderful book cover designer. Let's just put in a punt here. If you have not yet gone on to Amazon or the ebook dealer of your choice, you should go and look at Cultivating Happiness. If not for me, then for Carol, because she designed a flippin' amazing cover. Back to the anxiety activity that you can do. So my weirdness for the day, of course, is the fact that I am flippin' weird, and I want to physically hurt teachers who don't do things the way I think they should be done, which I actually don't think is that weird. But my friend who is a teacher and the school counsellor and Shannon say I'm not allowed to. Quite unreasonable. So here is my technique when you are feeling like that. So you have 5 fingers, and what we do is we breathe in as we go up our thumb and out. Slowly we do this. You're most welcome, Carol. In, up this finger, down. And Carol, this is something that you can do with annoying clients like me. So when you've just done this amazing design and they come back and go, oh, Carol, that's not quite what I was looking for, but they gave you a really bad brief in the first place, you can use this too. So breathe in as you go up the digit, out as we go down. I'm not doing this at the moment. Let me do it like you would do it. So in and out. And in and out. And in and out. And in and out. Now, that is something that you can sit and you can do that, you know. I'm doing it now. Well, I'm not doing it now because obviously I'd be breathing in and out, not talking. But you can do an activity like that in an exam, in a meeting. Carol has just put that I'm her best client. And you're my best book cover designer. You're amazing. And in fact, remind me to call you, Carol, because I've got somebody lined up who could help us with putting stuff together for doing book trailers and making them into movies, which I think would be awesome. Anyway, back to anxiety. So you can do this. Nobody needs to do it. And what I love about this one is it's got two, well, it hooks into a whole lot of anti-anxiety techniques. So those of you who have ever spent any time with me as a coach will know that when we're talking about anxiety, when we're talking about being sort of in that fight or flight mode, right, we have 2 bits of our brains that we're really interested in, right? So when you go into a parent-teacher conference or that that meeting with the annoying client, what you really want to be doing is having this front bit of your brain here, your cortex, working, because it's the clever bit of your brain. It can come up with solutions, it can learn, it can think, it can write exams, okay? It can talk to teachers, you know, without threatening to tear them limb from limb. You know, I had this sort of medieval, you know, because, you know, when people were drawn and quartered, it really did mean that they tied their hands and feet to horses and then pulled them until they came to pieces, and then took the pieces off to the different quarters of the British, of the England, I think it probably would have been then. Anyway, so you can do this whenever you have a moment when you feel like you either want to run away, because lots of people do want to. I have a fight, you know, so I have a fight rather than a flight response. So back to the neocortex. The neocortex is the bit that needs to be working when you're having those meetings. But what actually happens is that a bit of your brain, which is sort of here-ish, I think, neurology friends, help me out here, called your amygdala. And your amygdala is an incredible piece of brain. Your brain is an amazing piece of machinery, but your amygdala is responsible for this fight or flight response. So that's why I keep telling you about there's a muhi. I keep telling you about this desire to, you know, have people drawn and quartered when, you know, they don't give good comments well, the comments that I want them to give anyway. And what actually happens, so your amygdala is responsible for that fight or flight. So let's say you are walking down a dark street, it's deserted in the middle of the night, and you hear footsteps running up behind you. What actually happens in your brain, and I think this is really, really clever, is your amygdala goes, hang on a moment, this looks dangerous. And it says, and in times of danger, we don't want to be using this bit of our brain that's responsible for logic and reason, right? So we are not interested in thinking about whether the new mayor's policing policies have been effective in this part of town, right? What we're really interested in is making sure that this, whoever it is who's running behind us, isn't coming towards us with a knife. So what the amygdala does, shuts down clever bit of brain, and then shunts all your energy into your big muscle group. So your arms, your legs, your bum, your back, so that you can fight or flight. And it does this by giving you a big shot of adrenaline in the moment. Now, what is really clever about your body is that, I mean, that is really clever, right? The problem, of course, with that is that the world of school, the world of business, it has, it's developed faster than our brains can, you know. So, you know, in terms of evolution, for those of you who are not kind of creationists, in terms of evolution, our brains, we just haven't had enough generations go by, and the world is moving too fast. So your amygdala cannot distinguish between a teacher making you sit on the naughty step and someone running towards you with a knife, right? So when you walk into that meeting as a parent, the clever bit of your brain, the bit of your brain that can work with this educator to come up with solutions, that's switched off. The bit of your brain that is switched on is the bit of your brain that's like, I'm gonna take you out. Which is why in a school like the school my kid goes to, like, they apparently are telling me, like, no, I actually can't tell you this because I would be breaking confidentiality. Morning, Sharon. Hi. So, but that is why we go into this kind of fight or flight mode when somebody says something about our kids, right? So what do we do? Well, this little exercise that Chris was taught to manage his anxiety is something that we can do. It's a wonderful exercise. One, because nobody needs to know you're doing it, is the first one, right? Because you are just breathing in and out, and you are running one hand along the other like this that they can't see. Okay. The second thing about this is that you are actually thinking about it because it's an activity that Penny gave you to do. And that's important because if you want to shut down your amygdala and start up your cortex, then they're kind of an either or. So doing something that's like a cognitive function that we find easy, like making sure that my finger goes around all the fingers. Okay, it's cognitive, I have to think about it, but it's really easy, is a way that shuts down that amygdala and starts up our brain. It's also self-soothing, so it's a nice feeling, actually. If you do it now, you'll feel it actually feels quite nice and quite relaxing. So it's kind of a self-soothing technique, which is great. And the third thing is that it helps us control our breathing. And whilst we're doing this, actually, if you think about it, if you are taking nice, deep, slow breaths, they take generally about 90 seconds to do. And 90 seconds is all we need to actually reabsorb adrenaline back into our systems. So what happens in the course of doing that exercise is amygdala switches off, says, okay, everybody, woo, wait, threat is past, we're okay, made it through, even though we're on the naughty step, we can do this, guys. Body begins to reabsorb the adrenaline, so we can kind of relax. So you will notice, like, as you do something like this, you might find yourself going, and you might feel like some of the tension releasing out of your shoulders or back. For me, it's often like I realize like I can actually just sort of let things go in my body a little bit, you know, and that's an indicator for me that, okay, you know, the trauma has passed, we can do this, we can be sane as we go through the music. Well, I mean, not exactly sane in my, you know, in my for me, but for the rest of you who are, sane, Also, by the way, now I have not only my psychiatrist, I have my friend who's a neurologist, and I have the school counsellor. All three of them have refused to lend me the copies of their big blue book, the diagnostic book of mental illnesses, those things. Like, I think it's really unreasonable, and I know you have it in my best interest, but I really want it. I could diagnose myself with all kinds of amazing things. So I really want one. But anyway, when you have done that exercise, you are now hopefully able to move out of fight or flight. And if once doing it isn't enough, you just keep doing it until you can get to a point where you can get that feeling of like, okay, my cognitive functions are working here, and now I'm able to have a sane conversation with this educator. Okay, and in that moment is the moment where you can kind of go, okay, well, I can empathize with what you're trying to do. Guys, sometimes as parents, I don't think we always understand the pressure that is put upon an educator. I always used to go, oh, yeah, I should have been a teacher, finish at 2:00 every day. These days, I don't think, particularly in the private schools and particularly in the academic schools, I don't think life is like that. I think you're spending a lot of time searching for ways to make sure the kids are getting through, like not by cheating, by actually getting through, and thinking about how you need to modify your teaching style to accommodate everybody in a class. Lots of detailed marking, because these kids, a lot of them are shooting for distinctions, and the difference between a 79 and 80, they will take you on, as will their parents. So I think in a lot of those things, like, we probably as parents are often unaware or even uncaring, because think about it, for us as parents, this is sort of like it's like a vendor meeting often. It's like, you have sold me a service, and let's go through like our service level agreement sort of thing, which is not the paradigm that the educators always are living in, and we are unaware of it. So we're unaware of the fact that they may well been set targets of like, you can't have a kid fail in your class. They've been judged on that. The quality of their teaching, the quality of their careers is, often being judged on not only on what is the success they're having, what is the feedback they're getting from parents, what's the feedback they're getting from kids, what other things are they taking on. So the vast majority of teachers are taking on many, many things that we don't see. I mean, we just go, oh, my kid's going to band practice, but there's actually like teachers there running band practice, oh, my kid's in the school play, there's actually like the drama teacher is there, actually, like, trying to get these kids to do some decent acting, because, obviously, I have a child who does drama, and obviously, yeah, Kaylin, things aren't going to look good when he doesn't get an Oscar. I'm joking. But we're often unaware, and when we have our cognitive functions working, it allows us to be more empathetic and think about those things. But one of the things that really stood out for me in this meeting and in my spirited debate with my friend who's a teacher is that as parents, actually, no, we don't understand your world. We don't actually understand what are the pressures you are holding. And it's a question that I have for people who are teachers, whether it's in primary or secondary or tertiary education, or even in adult education. I mean, I have a little more understanding of adult education with my background, but one of the things for me is, no, as parents, we don't know what you're holding. So we don't understand your paradigm a lot of the time. And my question for you is, so I've told, by the way, teachers, you can also do this in a meeting, because I know I have been told, I don't feel like this, but I have been told that when I am on the warpath, I can be frightening. I don't feel frightening. I feel like a bit of a goon. I mean, I dress up in shapewear on Facebook Live. How can I be frightening? but nevertheless, I have been told that. So I would love to hear from any educators out there, what are some of the things, well, two questions I have for you really. The first is, morning Anne, how are you? You are so wonderful. You turn up for every Facebook Live. You're amazing. Mwah, mwah, mwah. What I would like to hear from you as educators is two things. So one of the things is, what are some of the things that we don't know about as parents or aren't thinking about? So when I walk into a parent-teacher meeting and you're there to tell me, listen, your kid, you know, because what happens generally for me is first, you know, because they know me and like me generally, a lot of the teachers send me a text first to warn me. Well, maybe that's also just because like they're managing the fallout, but they would often will text me and go, yeah, something's going on here, you know. Then generally what happens is the letter arrives, which is official letter, and then there is the summons. Okay, so for me, by the time I get the summons and I get called in, yeah, I'm in a state. But I am sure you are too. So I am sure seeing a parent in a state is pretty stressful for you. Having to send the letter is pretty stressful for you. Having to make the call is pretty stressful for you. So that's my second thing, is what are some of the things that we could do as parents that would help you be less stressed in those meetings, so that you could feel more empathy for us feeling like we're in the naughty chair? What are the things that we could do? How could we show up as parents that would be really useful for you, so that we could have a meeting like I had on Friday, where we kind of got to a place where we all understood what was going on. We have an action plan. Everyone knows that, you know, it's all good and we're in a happy place. And there's some things that, you know, the teachers are going to do, Chris is going to do, Shannon and I are going to do, and the medical team are going to do to move us forward, you know. So yeah, those are my two questions for you. Is number one, if you are an educator or have been an educator, what are the things that we as parents don't know about that you also do? Because we assume you just know the curriculum and you magically turn up and you spew it out to the children and you send them on their way. And I'm pretty certain there are other things involved. So what are some, number one, what are the things that we don't know about, you know? And guys who, you know, I'm not sure how many teachers actually follow these Facebook Lives, but send it along to your friends who are teachers, and get them to tell us what they are, because this is a real request. Actually, it's a practical one for me personally, but I think actually as all parents we want to know this. And even if we are older and we're grandparents, this is something that we can help our kids with when they have to go and do that, or when we have to step in. Because I sometimes, you know, yeah, after I made the primary school teacher cry, I wasn't allowed to go to parent-teacher meetings anymore. So there may have been one or two that my mother went instead of me, because Shannon says it's not productive if the principal is crying. And my second question is, so if we want to avoid Penny and the likes of Penny making the principal cry, actually the principal of the school, I don't think she's crying, nor her predecessor. Yeah, I mean, like, the one thing I have to say is, so Morag, who was the previous principal, you know, she had it waxed. Like, one of her things was like, she had chocolate around all the time. Like, when I walk in and somebody says, hey, I got given Ferrero Rocher and I don't like them that much, you want one? Like, you know the meeting's going to go well with me. But aside from chocolate, because it's probably not the most healthy technique for everybody, works with me. What are other things that we as parents could do that could help it make a parent-teacher conference less stressful for a teacher, so that, you know, instead of having this thing where you're having a meeting with two people who have their amygdala's fired up and are basically looking for techniques just to crush one another, how could we get the clever bits of our brains fired up that can come up with creative and useful strategies that are going to help our kids? Because at the end of the day, actually, you know, it pains me to say this, but it's not always about me. Sometimes it could be about somebody else. So, what could we do? So, I have 3 things to ask of you today. If you are an educator, answer my 2 questions, right? What are the other things that you do? Because we don't know. We really don't. Number 2 is, what are the things we could be doing as parents to make it better? And the third ask that I have is, for those of you who know educators, who have friends or children or spouses that are educators, please ask them, and please get them to give us their feedback, so that then, you know, it is one of the things that maybe we could collaborate on, put a little thing together. Who knows what we could do with it? You know, I can't actually say the words because, you know, the Facebook algorithm, but you know those words that you put down below there, put it there so that we can gather it all together, the data, and then maybe I can give you feedback on it. Maybe we can actually even make that the subject of one of the serious pieces of Facebook Live that I have been promising you. On that note, and to close out today, I thought it would be really good this month to do a little webinar-ish style. I found a piece of software that'll allow me to do a screen share on my Facebook Live, so it'll be kind of webinar style, but it will be done through Facebook Live, probably after work because it seemed what people liked, in the next week or so, but it's really going to be a technique that we can use to manage the curse of choice. So the curse of choice is that although we think it would be lovely to have more choices, there are consequences having more choices, and particularly for people who have tendencies towards perfectionism or tendencies towards needing to make sure they have always made the best choice, and it's something that really can add massively to our sense of well-being, is managing that. So it's based on an article that came out of some Harvard, well, it was in the Harvard Review, but it came out of research there called The Tyranny of Choice. It's based on that material. So those of you who like to go and read the academic underlying articles, feel free to go and look that one up. But I will be putting that together, and we will, before the end of March, so probably the next week or the week after, but I'll create an event and, you know, let everybody know about it. But that will be a serious evening webinar on how too much choice can affect our lives, and some techniques that you can use if you are somebody who actually is affected by that. So some of the things that you can do to be happier and and more successful, because that's what we're all about, right? A little bit of weird, a little bit of happy, a little bit of success. That's what we're all about here. Alrighty, I will talk to you maybe later in the week. I will be setting up that event, but you will be hearing from me and seeing posts and all those good things. And I am off to go and do a little bit more work on that secret side project that I'm not telling you about, but will be starting to tell you about in the weeks to come. So stay tuned.